Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC. For the next 2 hours, we're going to be talking politics, news, history, style, food, and, well, much, much more. So don't touch that dial. And if you're out of town, you can always hear us at WABCradio.com. That's WABCradio.com. I'm really impressed with how much fan mail I'm beginning to get from folks all over the country who are listening to the most dynamic AM radio station in the country online. So please feel free to join us at WABCradio.com. You know, it's bad enough that President Donald Trump now must face an entirely contrived and politically motivated charges cooked up by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. But as I predicted way back in April of last year, the president is now subjected to a gag order that prevents him from defending himself in the face of a media onslaught, the facts of which are consistently misstated, and the credibility of the witness against him go somewhat unchallenged. A gag order against President Donald Trump is not only unconstitutional, but obviously constitutes election interference in view of the fact that Donald Trump has essentially wrapped up the Republican nomination for President of the United States. He is, historical footnote, one of only 3 men in the history of the United States who will be nominated by the Republican National Convention 3 times. He shares that distinction, of course, with my old boss, Richard Milhouse Nixon. Now, those who argue that a gag order in Trump's case would only be limited to discussing the specific of Bragg's indictment of him, or of the handling of the case by the prosecutors or of the judge, misunderstand that because the indictment itself is entirely politically motivated, the gag itself is interfering with his right to communicate with voters within the framework of his campaign for president, as well as being, of course, a violation of his free speech rights. The judge in this case, Judge Juan Merchan, actually gave a contribution to Joe Biden's presidential campaign. That's a violation of the canon of ethics. It should have been obvious based on that action that he should have been recused to begin with. But there's some other important reasons why he should not be the judge sitting on this case, and investigative journalist Laura Loomer has uncovered some amazing conflicts of interest by Judge Merchan, conflicts of interest that were the subject of a filing by President Trump's lawyers this past Friday, in which he asked yet again that Judge Merchan be replaced and that he get a new and hopefully fair judge. The indefatigable Laura Loomer will be with us today. I recognize this tactic very much. I know a lot about gag orders because when I was charged in Robert Mueller's politically motivated witch hunt, Judge Amy Berman Jackson subjected me to a broad gag order, which was designed essentially to prevent me from pointing out that the government had admitted in my filings that the FBI had never examined the computer servers for the Democratic National Committee. That was the underlying premise of my indictment, that I had somehow misled the Congress regarding that point. I challenge that. No misstatement I made before the House Intelligence Committee was relevant, was material, hid any underlying crime. And to this day, contrary to the filings of the prosecutors in my case, the government never actually produced any evidence whatsoever that would prove that the Democratic National Committee was the target of an online hack by quote-unquote Russian intelligence or anyone else. In fact, long after my pardon, actually on November 3rd, 2020, the Justice Department was forced, only by federal court order, to release the long redacted sections of Robert Mueller's final report, in which even he could not sugarcoat the fact that, well, he'd actually found no factual evidence, his words, of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or actually any other crime on my part. At sentencing, the judge said to me, "You have been convicted of lying to cover up for Donald Trump." To which now I can say, cover up what? There was no Russian collusion. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration on President Trump's part. On my part, in fact, I had no motive whatsoever to lie. Not that long ago, the Business Insider, a particularly biased and notoriously inaccurate left-wing propaganda rag, recycled the idea that, quote, Roger Stone's longtime friend was slapped with a gag order in 2019 amid speculation, amid accusations by special counsel Robert Mueller's team banning the self-described political trickster, folks, I never described myself that way, from posting anything online about his case on social media. Judge Jackson imposed the restriction after Stone violated a less stringent gag order by posting an image of the judge on Instagram that had rifle crosshairs over her face. That is an egregious lie. In fact, on February 18th, 2019, I did, in my efforts to defend myself, post a graphic of Judge Jackson on what was then my Instagram feed that had in the upper left corner, very, very small, the logo of the organization that actually created the graphic. It was an organization called Corruption Central. Somebody at BuzzFeed, who's never held a rifle or a gun in their life, decided that the logo looked like the crosshairs on a rifle. I was then accused of threatening to kill the judge. I went out and got a signed affidavit from the graphic artist who made this tiny little image, which, by the way, was not over the judge's face, and he testified under oath that the logo, which appears all over their website, was in fact based on what they call a Celtic cross. But lost in the fake news media feeding frenzy is the fact that this exact same logo appears in the same place on many images produced by this organization, Corruption Central, because the organization had criticized people like Mark Zuckerberg and Kamala Harris. But it doesn't matter, you see. Once one of these media maelstroms begin, by the time the fake news media conflagration was over, this story had become, quote, Roger Stone posted a picture of the judge with a crosshair over her face, which is would have been read as a threat to the judge, but I never did anything of the kind. It was a tidal wave. It was a tsunami. I was very quickly summoned to Washington, D.C. By the media whipped up judge, in this case, Amy Berman Jackson, to explain this matter on the stand under withering and accusatory cross-examination, both by Judge Jackson and Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan Kravis, who just happens to have been appointed by Barack Obama and has a long reputation for abuse of power as a prosecutor, particularly in his investigation and prosecution of the presidential campaign of Congressman Ron Paul. I did say I apologized to the court for posting an image that was open to misinterpretation. It was, in truth, never my intention to threaten anyone. Now, I admitted my own stupidity in posting the image that was subject to misinterpretation, but my abject apology did not satisfy the judge because they were very interested in silencing me about the fact that the FBI had never actually examined the computer servers at the Democratic National Committee, and therefore the false narrative that the DNC was subjected to an online hack by Russian intelligence was seriously undermined. So the judge, who has, I'm guessing, never held a rifle with a scope in her hands and who wouldn't know a gun's sighting crosshairs if she fell over one, decided that I had threatened her. She kept insisting on this point, although I pointed out repeatedly, based on an affidavit from the graphic artist who made the image, that the entire thing had nothing to do with a rifle crosshair. This is part and parcel of the entire disinformation that we get from the national media, but when you're caught in the eye of the storm, well, truth is the first victim. Prosecutors wanted me jailed right there on the spot, but I think Judge Jackson knew that she had overplayed her hand by throwing my old colleague Paul Manafort into solitary confinement prior to his conviction on any crime. It didn't really sit well with the other judges in the D.C. Circuit, who had a somewhat higher regard for the Constitution. Usually people are not incarcerated until they have been convicted and sentenced. I left the courthouse with my freedom, but I was hobbled by a constitutionally questionable gag order. Now my deconstruction by the fake news really began. It was one of the great nightmares of my life, but among those who flatly reported that the image was a crosshair over the judge's face, despite testimony to the contrary, were CNBC, MSNBC, the BBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico. None of them quoted my insistence that the image was not a crosshair. I was not allowed to say anything in my own defense. And of course, none of them would cover the fact that the graphic artist who actually made the tiny image had said under oath that it had nothing to do with a crosshair or a rifle. Other than silencing me regarding the falsity of the charges against him, the other purpose of the gag order was to inhibit my ability to raise the money for my own legal defense. See, by that point, I had lost my home, my savings, my car, most of my insurance, because I was restricted in my travel by the court, and now with the gag order, I literally had no way to pay my bills. Incredibly, the gag order they put on me extended to my wife, my members of my family, and, quote, supporters. That's pretty broad. The judge actually extended the gag order beyond the verdict in my trial and all the way through sentencing. In other words, I was gagged before I went to trial, during my trial, after I was convicted, and right up until the time that I was supposed to be incarcerated, before President Donald Trump stepped in with a commutation of my sentence. The whole argument as to why I should be gagged is kind of similar to the one they're using today against Trump. They actually argued that if I was allowed to speak freely and defend myself, it might somehow, quote, taint a potential jury pool. This was at the same time that the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC were dumping on me. Of course, that didn't taint the jury pool in any way. The attempts by my lawyers to appeal the gag order was, in my opinion, wrongly structured, but by the time the Court of Appeal has essentially sat on my motion for my own free speech for 16 straight months, while I sustained daily damage from the attacks on me in the media, then approximately a week before my trial, the Court of Appeals ruled that, well, my appeal of the gag order was not ripe for decision because I had not first asked the very same judge who imposed the gag order on me to lift it, which of course she would never do. Now we see the same imposition of a gag order on President Donald Trump, and it is just as egregious. In fact, the judge in Donald Trump's upcoming Manhattan trial, I'm going to hat tip Paul Sperry on this, who put it very succinctly. This judge harbors a contempt for the rule of law that is sadly typical this day of many liberal justices. Inflamed by Trump's public salvos about the unfairness of the case against him, Judge Juan Merchan has imposed a gag order preventing the former president from criticizing court staff and members of their family, including the judge's adult daughter. So let's begin with the basics, as Mr. Sperry points out. Gag orders are almost always a prior restraint on speech. They are presumptively, therefore, unconstitutional. Silencing a defendant violates his or her First Amendment rights. Such orders are often a judicial abuse of power by some judges. They do it anyway because they're imperious or arrogant and they know they can get away with it. By the time the gag defendant appeals, well, it's too late. The trial is over. As the leading candidate for president, Donald Trump has an elevated right to exercise his freedom of expression, especially when his opponents have weaponized the law by bringing politically motivated charges against him to unduly influence the upcoming election. Anyone accused of a crime has a constitutionally protected right to defend themselves in both the court of law but also in the court of public opinion. This includes justified criticism of the trial judge, who has a noted history, in this case, of liberal bias. Judge Merchan, as I said earlier, donated to Joe Biden's campaign for president. Now, it was only $15, but the amount doesn't matter. It is evidence of bias. It's why the judge should step down. President Trump's lawyers filed a motion late on Friday asking him to do so, but I have no illusions that that will happen. Significantly, Judge Merchan's daughter has a incredible financial and economic interest in her father's case. She and her Democratic clients have raised some $93 million in campaign donations by citing the Trump in their fundraising solicitation mailings. This, according to a report in the New York Post. On that basis alone, Judge Merchan was obligated to recuse himself because a member of his family, which is identified as a child under strict ethical guidelines, has a private vested interest in the outcome of this case. Yet, to this day, he refuses to step aside despite this glaring conflict of interest. What that means, as Mr. Sperry has wrote, is the fix, folks, is in. There's no exemption under the First Amendment protecting the family members of judges. The merchant gag order is as wrongful as the decision not to disqualify himself in favor of a different judge who has no conflict and might actually be neutral or objective. The appearance of impropriety by itself is sufficient under recusal under Section 100.2 of the Code of Judicial Conduct in New York State. So in this gag order, Merchant would have us believe that Trump's comments may induce violent threats, yet there's no evidence of that. If it were otherwise, the former president would be charged with obstruction or tampering, but he hasn't been. He's confined his remarks to complaints about the inability to obtain a fair trial in New York from a clearly compromised judge and a Democrat district attorney, Alvin Bragg, who has brought an anemic and time-barred prosecution really by contorting the law. You see, it's perfectly okay for witnesses like Stormy Daniels, the adult actress, and confessed liars like Michael Cohen to trash Trump in their endless interviews and public comments, but the victims of their attack is gagged? The double standard here should be obvious. This unequal application of the law was compounded when a federal judge, Reggie Walton, recently appeared on CNN for the sole purpose of condemning Trump. But the target of Judge Walton's ire, Citizen Trump, he has his free speech rights curtailed. He can't respond to Judge Walton. The right to a fair trial, embodied in the 6th and 14th Amendments, protects the accused, not the accuser or the judge. They really have no right to gag Donald Trump, but they do have a sacred obligation to see that justice is done fairly, equitably, and impartially. Judge Marchand and DA Alvin Bragg have forsaken their duties by making a mockery of ethical standards. They have failed to uphold the integrity of our legal system and the honor of judicial independence. Is it any wonder whatsoever that Americans have lost confidence in our courts of law? Hat tip to the great Paul Sperry for that analysis. This is the Roger Stone Show. We've got a great show lined up for you. You know I love pizza. You know, pizza is like sex. Even when it's bad, well, it's still pretty good. We're going to be talking to a true pizzaiola, pizzeria maven Nick Laudano is going to join us, as well as the aforementioned investigative journalist Laura Loomer, as well as Chicago radio legend Mancow. All with us today on the Roger Stone Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of AM radio. If you didn't see it yesterday, Kamala Harris, currently the Vice President of the United States, posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, if reelected, she says, Trump has openly said that he intends to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. What world do these people live in? This is what they call a perfect example of a book by radical Saul Alinsky, who wrote a book, Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Here's some of his most important rules. Number 1, deny the obvious. Number 2, accuse others of exactly what you yourself are actually doing. Rule number 3, always demonize your victim. Rule number 4, practice the victim role, even if you are clearly the perpetrator. Rule number 5, know your target audiences. Rule number 6, one and unable to convince, confuse. Rule number 7, spread just not one, but many, many lies to create as much confusion as possible. Number 8, motivate others to spread and repeat your lies. Number 9, create and spread ridiculous propaganda. It makes your more subtle lies appear more legitimate. Then there's rule number 10. If it gets tough to deny, use whataboutism. 11, amplify all voices that support your version of events and narratives. Number 12, repeat your narratives in as many places and times as possible so that your audiences can pick them up and begin to parrot them. Rule 13, target less informed people. The dumber they are, the more vulnerable they are to disinformation. When your fabricated content triggers emotions, people will spread it even more. That's rule number 14. 15, make your audience feel special by misleading them to believe that they are well informed and that everybody else, well, they're just dumb. These are the rules of disinformation we see used on the America left every day. Nancy Pelosi actually bragged about how this worked. She called it the wrap-up smear. Let's listen to Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this, so they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
There you have it from the mouth of the horse herself. We see it every single day, whether it was the Russian collusion hoax or the idea that Donald Trump told people to drink bleach if they had COVID-19, or wait, Hunter Biden's laptop was that was all Russian disinformation. This list goes on and on. Last week, it was the bloodbath that Donald Trump predicted within our domestic car industry, but that's not how the media played it. It's really extraordinary that they keep falling back on this same tactic. It's interesting. Last night, I was coming out of Mar-a-Lago. I admit to you that I went there to see the president and the great Kari Lake, and a guy walked up to me and said, "Are you Roger Stone?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, you never sent me the crypto I bought from you." I said, "Pardon me?" "Yeah, the cryptocurrency I bought from you." I said, "I'm sorry, sir, I don't sell cryptocurrency." He said, "Sure you do. I bought it from you on Facebook." Folks, there's a Roger Stone on Facebook. It's not me. I'm banned for life on Facebook. I'm not selling any crypto. So please don't fall for that. By the way, my lawyers have contacted the folks who run Facebook multiple times to ask them to take this imposter down. And you know what we hear from them? Well, that would be nothing. Then you can go over to X, formerly known as Twitter, which, by the way, I have to admit I really love. I've been treated very fairly by Elon Musk, and you can always find out what's coming up on the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. I start Saturday afternoon letting people know what we're going to be talking about. But when I went to X, I found that there's my real profile. That's where I'm Roger J. Stone Jr. I'm verified. I have a little blue check mark. But then there's Roger Stone, who's at Roger1242. That's not me. Then there's Roger J. Stones with a Z. He uses my picture, but that's not me either. Then there's Roger J. Stone Jr. 12. He uses the exact same picture as my genuine profile, but, well, that's not me either. Then there's Roger Stone _ NY. He also uses the same picture that's in my verified profile. But that's not me either, folks. And then, of course, there's Real Roger Stone 2. He also likes that same picture of me. But that's not Roger Stone. So you can hear me on, or read me, I should say, on X, formerly known as Twitter. And it's a great place to find out what's coming up every week on 77 WABC on The Roger Stone Show. But please go to my real profile. That's Roger J. Stone Jr. Gee, my father would be proud. All right, folks, this is the Roger Stone Show. You're tuned into the most dynamic AM radio station on the face of the planet. We're live streaming in 173 countries worldwide. You can hear us on WABCRadio.com. And as the great Jackie Gleason used to say, away we go.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We're the crown jewel of AM radio. And now it is my great privilege to introduce one of my very best friends and a woman of extraordinary courage, energy. Well, she's actually indefatigable. That would be investigative independent journalist Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer's in the news these days because, well, it was Laura Loomer who discovered the glaring conflict of interest by Judge Juan Merchan in the Alvin Bragg prosecution of Donald Trump in the so-called hush money case. And now the findings of Laura Loomer have actually been embodied in a motion by President Donald Trump's lawyers to yet again ask Judge Merchan to recuse himself from this case because he has a glaring conflict of interest. Now, as we pointed out to you earlier in the show, the judge gave a $15 contribution to Joe Biden's presidential campaign. That is not only a violation of the canon of ethics, but it is an obvious demonstration of bias. By the way, it doesn't matter if it was $15, $50, $500, or $5,000. It's the fact that he broke the rules for judges by giving a contribution that betrayed his political bias. But Laura Loomer, who is a ubiquitous presence on X, has her very own show, Loomer Unleashed, on Rumble, which is a must-see, joins us now on the Roger Stone Show.
Thanks for having me, Roger. It's great to be here with you.
Saw a picture of you on Twitter this morning, Laura. Your hair looks really, really great.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
This is kind of an inside joke. Laura had some red streaks in her hair the other night, and I don't know, it's just my taste. I prefer her as a brunette. But she's always well-dressed. She's always impeccably groomed. And she's one of my best friends, which seems to drive people on the left stark raving mad. It's kind of entertaining. So, Laura, what is it you learned about Judge Merchan's daughter, Lauren Merchan, that constitutes this conflict of interest?
Well, look, she's not just any daughter, right? I mean, some people, when they first saw the story, they said, oh, President Trump is going after, the child of a judge. Well, when you understand the facts, you realize that Lauren Merchan is the president of a company called Authentic Campaigns, which is a very large, high-profile Democrat political consulting firm that does hundreds of millions of dollars of business with the most high-profile Democrats in our nation who all happen to hate Donald Trump. One of the top clients of this company, Authentic Campaigns, is Adam Schiff, who, of course, is one of the ringleaders, probably the most prominent ringleader in the Russia collusion hoax, and also one of the loudest voices who has been campaigning on getting Trump. Also, the Biden-Harris campaign is currently a client of Authentic Campaigns. And what I uncovered about Lauren Mershon that really sparked all of this these last few days over the last week is her ex-profile account was a photo of her. It was a photo of Donald Trump behind jail bars. And so imagine, right, the judge's daughter having an ex-profile account that has a photo of Donald Trump behind jail bars while the judge is supposed to be overseeing this trial, which is set to begin on April 15th, right? So it was major conflict of interest here. And now, you have the court correspondent for the court in New York saying, well, it was her account, but it's not her account anymore, kind of taking this whole Joy Reid defense, right, of, I was hacked, or, the account is somebody else's account. But we have the archive and we have photographs of her giving a presentation for her company, Authentic Campaigns, where she's standing in front of a projector, rather, with the same Twitter handle that says Lauren M426, which is the same Twitter handle that has the photo of Donald Trump photoshopped behind jail bars. So there's really no getting out of this one for Lauren Mershon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The media, I think, tries to give the impression that she's a child. She's not a child. She's a Democratic political operative and fundraiser. And the key point here is that she has raised at least $93 million for her clients, specifically using this trial in her advertising. So the trial being run by her judge father is making her money. This, of course, would be grounds for appeal in the, I hate to say it, probable possibility or probable potential that Donald Trump is convicted in a kangaroo court proceeding. No one in their right mind believes that the president is going to get a fair trial. This is all about political interference. Laura, as you know, prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, federal prosecutors, these people are not friends of Donald Trump. This is the most politicized U.S. Attorney's Office in the United States. They examined all the facts in this case, and they elected to bring no prosecution. Mr. Bragg can't even define what the underlying crime here. What is the underlying crime? It was Michael Cohen, perhaps the dumbest human being on the face of the planet, who made these alleged hush money payments to the adult movie actress Stormy Daniels. Now, Mr. Cohen has denied doing that in writing and in under oath. Stormy Daniels has denied receiving them in writing and in under oath. But now, suddenly, they're changing their story. So this is all about getting Trump. It's about the effort to get Trump. A source tells me that a very prominent and respected attorney, Robert Costello, who at one time represented Michael Cohen, but no longer does, and for whom the privilege of confidentiality has been waived, could testify honestly that Michael Cohen, who is the chief witness for Mr. Bragg, told him both directly and in writing on numerous occasions that Donald Trump had done nothing wrong. Michael Avenatti, you remember him. He's the high-profile lawyer who represented Stormy Daniels. He was actually speculated about as a Democratic presidential candidate. Now he's sitting in a federal penitentiary because he was convicted of dipping into his client's funds, including by Stormy Daniels himself. Mr. Avenatti has come forward to say that while the person having an affair with Stormy Daniels and anxious to cover it up was not Donald Trump, but was Michael Cohen. I've had my own experience with Mr. Cohen. He testified under oath before the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, claiming that in 2016 that he overheard a phone conversation between candidate Donald Trump and me because Trump put the telephone call on a speakerphone, and Mr. Cohen alleges that I told candidate Trump that Julian Assange of WikiLeaks had obtained embarrassing bombshell information that was going to rock Hillary Clinton's campaign, and that he was going to release said information in October. First, Mr. Cohen said this phone conversation happened in July of 2016. Then I think after coaching by prosecutors to try to make them fit a contrived timeline, they said it happened in August of 2016. The Trump assistant who Mr. Cohen alleged came into the room and said, "Mr. Trump, Roger Stone is on line 1," before he put me on the speakerphone. She has no memory of this whatsoever, and there, by the way, is no telephone record that bolsters this false claim. But I can tell you exactly when that phone call took place. That would be never. Mr. Cohen is a convicted liar. He has a motive. He had this demented idea that had Trump been elected, he would have been named as White House Chief of Staff or White House General Counsel, two jobs that he is incredibly unsuited for. And his credibility is so bad. Well, the federal investigators didn't want to put him as a witness in a prosecution on the hush money case. They never called him as a witness in my trial. Think that's because they know he would have been eviscerated. Small footnote, folks, he's also he's now 2 years running on my international worst dressed list that I publish every New Year's Day. I really had no idea that Rolston Purina was still making sports jackets. Laura, what happens next here? It really is, my hat is off to you because it really is your reporting, your fearless reporting that took Golden Boy Ron DeSantis, who, people forget this, once led Donald Trump in the polls after his tumultuous 2022 victory, but who now had to withdraw the race because, well, he got no votes. It's the way it usually works. I think you deserve more credit than anyone else, although I kind of think I'm up there with you, in the takedown and exposure of Ron DeSantis as the treacherous, backstabbing, ungrateful weasel that he is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do my best to fight for President Trump on a daily basis, whether that's exposing Ron DeSanctimonious or Judge Merchan or Judge Engoron. So I'm happy to help because we need to get President Trump back into the White House. And our country is, on the brink of total collapse. And one of the biggest factors driving that collapse is the absolute rot and corruption within our Department of Injustice, as I like to call it. So I'm always happy to help. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to be an independent journalist fighting for our country and also fighting against the witch hunts against President Trump, because the attacks on President Trump are attacks on us and they're attacks on our country. And I really do believe that we're going to fail if Donald Trump doesn't get back into the White House.
I obviously could not agree with you more. So, Laura, I actually don't know when you sleep. I'm trying to figure out when you sleep. You have a news aggregation site, which is very good. You have your regular account on X, formerly known as Twitter, always lively and combative. That's the part I like. Laura Loomer takes no crap from anybody. And when the left comes back at her, well, you don't want to get in between that. She will always defend herself. You're doing this great show at Rumble, Loomer Unleashed. You've had some amazing guests. Do you ever sleep?
No, I do not. Come on, Roger. You know that I don't sleep. That's why we're always texting each other at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't sleep either.
One of the great, shall we say, pranks of all time. This was at a time that neither Laura Loomer and I had been restored to X, formerly known as Twitter. I think we're on Parler at the time, a social media site that has gone, the way of history. And it was late night, and I was kind of in a good mood, and I posted that I admire Laura Loomer so much, and since I have no heirs, I think I am going to freeze some of my seed so that someday down the road, if Laura Loomer chooses to have a child, that, I could be the surrogate, the in vitro father. And then Laura and I decided that we would name the child Donald after Trump, Ronald after Reagan, Stone after me, Loomer. Folks, it was a joke, but
it was a very funny joke, though.
The people went out of their minds. They went out of their minds. Actually, I think we should recycle it just to trigger them yet again. It's one of the favorite things that I have done with Laura. Laura ran twice for Congress. She doesn't get enough credit for that, folks. She ran in one of the most difficult uphill districts in all of Florida. Happens to be the district that President Donald Trump lives in. He proudly voted for her. She hit a high water mark. No Republican has ever reached the level she did in the election. Laura, what was your final percentage in your first election?
Well, in my first election, I got over 40% of the vote.
Which, folks, this is an 80 to 20 Democratic district, one of the bluest districts in the country.
I actually got more votes than Donald Trump did in his own home district. I got over 5% more votes than Donald Trump did in the home district when you look at the breakdown of votes, which means that there were crossover votes. People who voted for Joe Biden also voted for me because I was that compelling of a candidate. I also won a 7-way primary while being the first deplatformed candidate in U.S. history. So I was able to get over 40% of the vote while being deplatformed. And I think that is probably the most extraordinary part of my campaign, because it was at a time when people said that censorship was a right-wing conspiracy theory, and I was the first and only candidate in U.S. history to run for office with zero social media because they wouldn't allow me to have it.
It was an extraordinary campaign. The incumbent is a woman named Lois Frankel, who she's very much like Joe Biden. I'm not sure she knows what day of the week it is. She's an anachronism, but Nancy Pelosi made unlimited campaign funds available for her. And of course, can't blame her, Lois Frankel wouldn't debate Laura Loomer. She refused to debate Laura Loomer, which I think is an insult to the voters. Then Laura subsequently ran, after moving to another district in Florida. She ran against an incumbent, Dan Webster, who was kind of a rhino Republican, had served as, I think, both president of the Senate in Florida as well as Speaker of the House. I think that election, I hate to say it, that election was stolen from you. I have seen actual hard evidence provided by the election integrity expert and tech wonk Chris Gleason, one of the smartest guys I know, also one of the guys who told me in no uncertain terms when I was fearing for my life that I better start reading the Bible and turn my life over to Christ. A good friend, but also a genius. I mean, truly a genius in terms of his analysis of public data. He essentially proved that in Lake County, one of the largest counties in Laura's district, that the Board of Elections mailed out 5,000 mail-in ballots. By law, the exterior envelope must say return address requested. In other words, if it's undeliverable, it has to go back to the Board of Elections. But Laura, somebody inside the Board of Elections cast those votes, and I don't think they casted them for you. So I believe Laura Loomer won her house in her seat in Congress, but, and this is important, I actually think she's doing a greater service to this country right now, not being in Congress, than she would have done as a junior member of the House. If you want to make God laugh, tell God about your plans. Laura Loomer is a force of nature, and she has played a bigger and more impactful role in this presidential campaign than she ever could have played as a member of the House of Representatives. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show. I'm here with investigative journalist and bulldog Laura Loomer, and we will be right back.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio, and we're here with investigative journalist, independent investigative journalist, Laura Loomer, also known, by the way, as the most censored and banned person in the world. Laura, how many platforms have you been banned on?
I'm pretty much banned on all of them, except now I've got my Twitter account back after being reinstated, after Elon Musk purchased the platform. But no, I've been banned on pretty much every single social media site. I mean, I can't even give you an exact number because there's just so many of them. No Facebook, no Instagram, no PayPal, none of that.
As I understand it, you can't even order an Uber, right? You're banned on Uber. That's not even a social media platform.
Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, yeah, all of that.
Wow, you must really be dangerous.
Well, that's what they say, right?
Look, I'm right up with you. I talked about it in the opening segment. I mean, I have some guy on Facebook posing as me who's out selling crypto. I don't.
Well, you were attacked the other day. You had somebody. You're not dangerous, but the people that they're inciting against you are. You said you got attacked the other day when you went out to eat.
Yeah, thanks to my smart thinking or my fast thinking friend Michael Caputo, nobody got hurt. But yeah, the people on the left are lunatics. I don't want to talk about this too much because it engenders copycats. But if I went to dinner with Laura Loomer, let's say we were in a nice restaurant and we saw, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff sitting on the corner having lunch. I would not go over and bother their lunch. I'd ignore them. That would be my approach. It's not a public event. Now, when Laura Loomer goes and Loomers somebody at a public event, and this was great the other night at Mar-a-Lago, Laura and I were both there for, I think that was the best political party of the year. It was a fundraiser for the Great Kari Lake. President Trump was there. Our mutual friend, Roseanne Barr, who we love very much, was there. Chad Prather, the kind of country and western comedian, was there. Jim Brewer is a very, very funny comedian, was there. I had to apologize all to those professional comedians because I was so much better, funnier than they were. But it was a great, great night. And the best part of it was when President Trump saw Laura in the crowd, and he called her out for her toughness, for her resolve, and said, let me tell you folks, one thing you don't want to get loomered. You don't want that. You don't want to get loomered. It was a great tribute to you, Laura. So I understand you're going to go to New York to cover the upcoming trial.
Yeah, I'm planning on going to New York to cover the trial, which is set to begin on April 15th in New York City. So I will be there. And so I hope to meet people. If you live in New York, be sure you get out, or just in the tri-state area, be sure that you show up with your Trump flags and your signs in support of President Trump to protest peacefully against this weaponized government and two-tier justice system banana republic. Starts on April 15th, New York City.
It is, I think, the weakest case of all the cases against Trump. You notice that in Florida, Jack Smith, the special counsel, is now threatening a federal judge. This is talking to lawyers I respect, lawyers like David Schoen, the famous criminal defense lawyer. This is unheard of. Prosecutors do not threaten federal judges. But evidently Mr. Smith is unhappy with some, not even decisions, but some preliminary inquiries that Judge Eileen Cannon made. And just the fact that he mentions the Presidential Records Act, which based on a decision by Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who was actually the judge in my case, that said Bill Clinton had every right to keep 78 audio recordings of official meetings in the Oval Office in his sock drawer at home. That's okay if you're Bill Clinton, but you can't keep classified or top secret documents if you're Donald Trump. It is a stunning turn of events. And Mr. Smith is charging President Trump under the Espionage Act, which no president or vice president has ever been charged under. His threats to the judge and the backdrop of all the fake news people at MSNBC, particularly that mental midget Joy Reid, threatening a federal judge. You notice how they never threaten any of the judges in D.C. Here's what I love. Judge Cannon in the Florida documents case, she must step down because she was appointed by Donald Trump. Well, guess what? Every single judge who sat in judgment on those who were charged in the Mueller collusion hoax, General Flynn, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, that conspiracy was hatched in Barack Obama's office. And the president who appointed the judge in all of those cases was Barack Obama himself. But for some reason, Andrew Weissman didn't have a lavender conniption fit about this. That didn't bother him at all. The double standard that they hold Donald Trump to is really quite extraordinary and offensive. So, Laura, tell people where they can see the great Laura Loomer. Where can they see you? Where can they hear you?
Thank you. Yeah, so people can follow me on X and Truth Social at Laura Loomer. And then my website is loomered.com. And they can also watch my show every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern live on Rumble at rumble.com/Laura Loomer.
There you have it, folks. You do not want to miss Laura Loomer's late night Rumble show. She has great guests. She's going to continue to play, I think, one of the most important roles in this presidential campaign. Like Donald Trump himself, she is a force of nature. People know that she and I are close friends, and they often say to me, could you call Laura and tell her not to do this or not to do that or to do this differently? Well, first of all my conversations with Laura Loomer are confidential, but Laura is her own person. I admire that, actually. She's a woman of uncommon courage, independence, and her devotion and loyalty to President Donald Trump is something to be honored, revered, and respected. Laura Loomer, thank you so much for joining us for this special interview on The Roger Stone Show.
Thanks for having me, Roger.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you are tuned in to The Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC. Now would be an excellent time for you to go right to your cell phone and download the 77 WABC radio app. That way you will never miss any of the amazing programming we have here at 77 WABC, both talk and entertainment. I'm talking about greats like Larry Kudlow, who was the quarterback of the rejuvenation of the American economy under President Donald Trump, or my old friend Cindy Adams, the queen of gossip, the queen of the night. I always love her show. Frank Morano, if you're a night owl, you got to tune in for Frank Morano. He has the most interesting guests. He has the graveyard shift. But on those nights that I have insomnia, which is a lot, I never miss Frank Morano, The Other Side of Midnight. Dominic Carter. When I met Dominic Carter at New York News, I considered him, a liberal. But Dominic Carter is a man of uncommon common sense. I really enjoy it when he faces off against former Congressman Anthony Weiner on Saturdays. Those slugfests have been very entertaining. Hey, Dominic, if you need a corner man, just give me a call. You don't want to miss any of this great stuff on 77 WABC, folks, so be sure to go download the app, and you don't have to miss any of it. Anybody knows me knows that my favorite food is pizza. Pizza is one of the 5 major food groups as far as I'm concerned. The best pizza in the world, as everybody knows, really no longer exists. It's the pizza of your childhood. That first magical bite sets the flavor which you end up spending the rest of your life trying to recapture. Very much like the famous New York Times food critic Ruth Reichel, in my case, the pizza literally no longer exists because it was served by a restaurant called Phil Baker's, which was attached to a bowling alley in Norwalk, Connecticut, where I was born and where I grew up. The fragrance as the pizza neared your table was absolutely intoxicating. The sweetness of the tomato set off by the slightly sharp taste of the cheese, and then something else, yeast perhaps, or I don't know, a bit of basil. I'm not really sure. The crust was thin, yet so crisp that the wedge did not crumple when you picked it up, and you could put the point right into your mouth. It was wonderful stuff. And years later, when they tore Phil Baker's restaurant down to make room for the new Route 7, which actually ended up going right through what would have been the dining room of Phil Baker's restaurant, I was despondent. I actually used to ride my bicycle. I would save my pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters until I had enough to buy a pizza. And I would ride my bicycle and go to Phil Baker's restaurant. I was so young that the waiters made me count out all the change on the table to make sure I could actually pay for the pizza that I was going to order. Now, you can get a lot of great pizzas in this world, but the very best pizzas come from a place called New Haven, Connecticut, where there are two meccas of great pizza. One is Frank Pepe's Pizza. The other one is Sally's Pizza. New Haven style pizza is a very, very specific style of pizza. It's not really made anyplace else. Well, that is until recently. So Nick Lodano, I call him Pizza Nick, has opened a pizza joint here in Florida, which he is rapidly expanding to a number of places. And he has not only duplicated, but in my opinion, he has actually improved upon the great pizza of Frank Pepe's and Sally's that I just mentioned. His place is called Ah-Beetz, which of course is the pronunciation of the word pizza spelled A-P-I-Z-Z-A. That's how Italians say it, Ah-Beetz. And Pizza Nick Lodano joins us now on The Roger Stone Show.
Good morning, Roger, and thank you for the great introduction and all the accolades to the New Haven scene out there. And thank you for the support and the constant visits and critiquing of what we call Ah-Beetz, New Haven pizza.
Well, Nick, I admit that I'm a pizza fanatic. Now, as I said earlier, pizza is like sex. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. And let's face it, any slice of pizza at 3 o'clock in the morning after you've had a few cocktails is always great. But you've done something really extraordinary. You have taken New Haven style pizza. And for those who don't know, Worcester Street in New Haven, Connecticut, was the original mecca of great pizza. I actually took the great Ronald Reagan to New Haven. We roped off the street, and Reagan did a campaign appearance, touring Worcester Street. He stopped at Frank Pepe's. He stopped at Sally's. You can't go to one and not go to the other if you're the President of the United States. And he stopped and had a little cannoli and some double espresso. It was a great, great day. Remember it like it was yesterday. But for my friends out there, because pizza is a very opinionated thing. I mean, everybody has a different opinion. It's subjective. I understand that some people like what they would call New York style pizza. Other people prefer this Chicago pizza, which for me has too much bread to it. But tell our listeners, what distinguishes New Haven style pizza?
Sure. So growing up in New Haven, growing up in the Worcester Street area, Fairhaven, which is a neighborhood of New Haven, I only know one thing. I only know Ah-Beetz. It's a high quality craft pizza. How else to explain it is it's unique. It's part of New Haven, and it's really by touch and feel. So what we created at Ah-Beetz was what I grew up in the 1970s, walking around the streets of New Haven with my grandmother and visiting the local bakeries, and actually the taste buds are just of that quality. It starts with, a very simple recipe of the dough, which is handcrafted, done by touch, done by feel. Your fingers have to know what it feels like. You have to be able to relay that to other pizza makers, whether they come from New York style or Chicago style. When our training process is, it's done by touch and feel. We could write all the processes and procedures down we want, but it's really by touch and feel. And I like to explain when a chef makes a chicken Marcel, it's one guy doing the chicken. Marcel, it's about 4 ingredients, takes about 10 minutes. When you're trying to make the best pizza out there, the best Ah-Beetz out there, it's about a 3-day process, 2 to 3 day process. 4 or 5 people involved in it, from the guy who makes the dough to the humidity to the room temperature to putting away the dough. Then the next day, the guy comes out, makes the dough, and a different guy cooks it and cuts it. All systems need to have to be on point. And what you're experiencing and what we've got accustomed to in Ah-Beetz, Delray Beach, Florida, is what I grew up on in 1975, 76, 77. Eating Frank Pepe's, Sally's, Grand Ah-Beetz, Palm Beach Pizza was one of my favorites. It's no longer there. I grew up 2 doors down from a bakery called Apocella's Bakery, and they had the oven outside in the backyard, and they're still around today, and they're one of the biggest bakers in Connecticut. And I used to walk by them going to school over in the Fairhaven section and go to their backyard and get the bread out and touch the dough. And, we're friends and went to school with some of the kids or grandkids at that time. So I only know Ah-Beetz. I don't know how to make a New York pizza. I don't know how to make a Chicago pizza. I could do it. I could learn it. But my passion is perfecting the craft of Ah-Beetz. And, it comes from the dough, the fresh yeast, good California tomatoes, high-quality cheese, Pecorino Romano, not Parmesan. We shave it off the block. And the end product in a coal-fire oven, which really takes it to the next level. And we build our own ovens. I've crafted, we craft our own oven. We build them brick by brick in all our stores. I've built about 15 ovens at this point. And, you've experienced it. We've had dinner a couple of times, couple of lunches there. And, the guys got it down. My son works with me. All he knows is Ah-Beetz, my partner Cass. And, we have New Haven in Delray Beach. So sometimes we don't even like to call it New Haven style because it's actually New Haven pizza. It's just in a different location.
So, Nick, tell us about the oven. What do you use? Fire? You use coal? You electric? How do you get that slightly burned char on the edge? That's what makes the pizza. How do you do that?
So my first oven I built was in 95, and I slammed it on the back of a railroad train. The pizza place is still existing in Wallingford, Connecticut, and I kind of modeled it from modern Ah-Beetz there in State Street, and it was an oil-fired burner, and they still use an oil-fired burner today. And we called it the Dragon because this flame, it was the regular oil burner that everybody had in their households, and the thing shot out a flame about 2 feet, and modern still uses it today. And that was the first oven I built, 1995, 96. But what we use today is I've expanded to a coal-fired. We found that the coal-fired was even easier to operate, we believe, than the oil-fired. But we use coal-fired stove today. It's normally 10 by 10 feet. We build it on site. Once, you can't take it with you. It's built in place. And that creates that darkness around the crust that we call char. Some people call it burnt, but we call it char. There's definitely an acquired taste for Ah-Beetz. If it gets by the eyes and gets to the mouth, we got them, and we have a new customer. So the coal fire is where we are. That's where we plan to stay. And there's a couple good groups out there that still do it. There's not many. There's probably only half a dozen real pizzerias that still use the coal.
So one of the phenomena that many, many people do not even know about is the Connecticut-style white clam pizza. This is a white pizza that uses top neck clams, fresh top neck clams, garlic, maybe a little Romano cheese, a little olive oil. It's sublime. It's if you think of linguine white clams, it's kind of like that, but instead of pasta, which has to be linguine, frankly. It has a lot of the same flavor, and when it's done right, it's absolutely extraordinary. Now, not many places offer it because you got to fly in fresh clams every day. You can't go use clams out of a can, and therefore you don't find it. But tell us about your white clam pizza.
Yeah, the white clam is one of my favorites, and it's one of the pizzas that's very simple but delicate and has the cuisine of a linguine and clams like I know you like to enjoy. So I would say that like in the 1920s, 1930s, when the white clam pizza was created by Frank Pepe's, it was a poor man's pizza. Being next to Long Island Sound, not being able to afford cheese. Most of the immigrants that came into the New Haven area worked in the factories and all the small businesses and made New Haven for what it is, and my grandparents were one of them, was that you had a piece of dough. They went to Long Island Sound. They got the clams, and they put them on the pizza with a little Romano, like you're saying, and some garlic. So it was really developed as a cheap pizza. That has changed, and it's become the most expensive pizza at this time, just because of the seafood and all the inflation and the gas and what it takes to actually do it and the labor to shut the clams. So our pizza is done with the same dough. It's a 2-day fermented dough, and we shuck our clams pretty much daily. We're about 1 day behind. We do about 15 bushels a week here in Delray. And with the fresh garlic, never powdered garlic or salted garlic, with fresh garlic, little olive oil, the little Romano off the wheel, you have the white clam pizza that transformed over the years, and there's a definite taste for it. And, sometimes you do a little clam casino, you add a little bit of bacon and some cherry peppers on it, which makes it really nice, like a clam casino out of the shell. But really, that's it. And we refuse to make a clam pizza red. And people ask for it, and we don't turn many customers down, but we do not make a red clam pizza because every time we make it, it comes back. It becomes wet, it becomes soggy. They think they know better, and we got to have it with cheese and sauce and put the clams on, and we will not do that. So we make a traditional white clam Ah-Beetz, and that's what you had a few times. And we sell a lot of them. It's a real popular pizza.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, I'm talking to Nick Laudano, a man who knows his pizza. I call him Pizza Nick, and he's brought the New Haven style pizza to Florida. And I've seen the expansion of Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza, which is a completely entirely different type of pizza, but I now see it expanding, started in Florida, but expanded all over the Midwest and the Northeast, including New York. When we come back, we're going to talk to Nick Laudano about his expansion plans because, folks, you cannot go on to your maker until you've had this pizza. Greatest pizza I've ever had. We'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is The Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of AM radio. I think the most powerful, dynamic, and influential AM radio station on the place of on the planet Earth, in all honesty. So be sure to go by the the App Store. Grab the 77 WABC radio app because you don't want to miss any of the incredible programming, both talk and entertainment, that we feature here at 77 WABC. This is the radio show I grew up on, and I'm so proud to be with you every Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And if, unfortunately for you, you don't live in the greater New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, you can always find us at WABCRadio.com because we're live streaming in 173 countries worldwide. You never need be without 77 WABC Radio. If you're not starting your day with my good friend Sid Rosenberg in the morning, you're really, really missing the boat, folks. So get that app. You don't want to miss any of the great stuff we're doing here at 77 WABC. We're talking to Nick Lodano, who is a man who knows his pizza. Like me, he's a native of Connecticut and a devotee of the New Haven style of pizza. Now, Frank Pepe's Pizza, which was once considered one of the great meccas of pizza, they have recently expanded to locations in Florida. I went to them with a high level of excitement and anticipation, but for some reason, Nick, I found the bottom of the pizza too crunchy, too hard. It didn't seem right. I'm not here to disrespect Frank Pepe, who was a giant of pizza, but what are they doing wrong?
So that's one of the tricks. Thanks, Raj. So that's one of the tricks is the oven and the cooking aspect of it. I'm guessing that the recipe hasn't changed much, but what has changed is in the expansions are the cooking process. And, at Ah-Beetz, New Haven Pizza in Delray, we built our own oven, and the guys are from New Haven, and we cook the pizza in that 2.5 to 4 minute mark. And Pepe's, which I've visited a few times, I was actually even standing in the kitchen. They didn't know who I was, and they thought I was corporate or something, but I'm just wandering around in their kitchen. They were at the 8 and 10 minute mark. And what they were doing was a cracker dough. So when you're putting the dough into the oven, the moisture content is how quick you cook the pizza, which you want to keep the hydration into the dough. So once you get over that 5, 6, 7, 8 minute mark, like a regular Baker's Pride or Blodgett, and that's what Anthony's Coal Fire is cooking at, and that's what Frank Pepe's is cooking at, so they can actually handle it. So their extended cook time is why their pizza is far inferior to what we're putting, 3 miles away up the street. And we'll continue to do that because we have a great training program and a good staff. So it's tough to expand, not beating up on them, but what they're putting out is not what you received in New Haven in 1970s or 50s or 80s. So we're on the expansion train. We are expanding. We have 4 stores under construction right now, 1 in West Palm Beach, 1 in Lake Park, and 1 in Royal Palm. We also built a pretty cool pizza truck, a beach truck that will do parties, private events, golf tournaments, some breweries around the Palm Beach area, probably into Broward. And we're going to be the first New Haven pizza concept that will be franchisable. We're very close in being able to franchise, like days or weeks away. We have a great legal team and corporate structure for the franchising aspect. We brought a great chairman of the board in, Jim Greco, who was the CEO of Sbarro Pizza. And, we have some expansion plans and a great training process. And, one of the things I haven't talked about, and if I got a minute, the name Ah-Beetz was pretty clever. In 2015, I thought I was onto something. And when I opened up Nick's New Haven Style in Boca, my partner there was like, no one knows Ah-Beetz. only you guys up in New Haven know Ah-Beetz. And he was right. Back in the 2010, 11, 12, it wasn't like it is now. And because of Dave Portnoy, there's a great article in the New York Times, Jimmy Kimmel, Elon Musk, and Joe Rogan. It has really caught fire. And we're in the fire wave to where, as you said earlier in the show, APIZZA is the actual spelling of Ah-Beetz. But when we were putting Ah-Beetz on our signs, everybody was A-Pizza. The people that didn't understand it, A-Pizza. So what I did was, in Wikipedia, the pronunciation of APIZZA is Ah-Beetz, A-H-B-E-E-T-Z. Say it right. So that's our little niche. That's how we're bringing it mainstream. That's how we're going to be able to expand, franchisable, and really get the New Haven product, definitely all over the country, and have a great training process, great training procedures. Our expansion will start here in Palm Beach County, head down to Broward, over to Naples, and then wrap back around through Orlando, and kind of like do a corporate store on each county and then franchise around them. We've been at this for about 10 years. And it's actually in fruition. It's reality, and we're excited. And you got to have fun, and we're having fun. And when you come in and have the pizza, it's fun. You even had your birthday there, and we had a cake there for you and stuff. So it's been a great experience, and totally thank you for all the support. And
all right, two obvious questions, because right now everybody in the New York, New Jersey listening area of 77 WSA, their mouths are collectively watering. Plans ultimately to go to New York, Connecticut, New Jersey? Is that a possibility?
Yes, that's a very good possibility. And we get calls pretty regularly about franchising opportunities. New York could be a little tough with the coal oven. Don't know how that transpires, but Connecticut, we're in discussions with one or two groups about taking on some franchising stores. Definitely Boston, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a great market. We have a great fan base. We have in Delray, being in Delray Beach and in Boca, we have a very good audience that travels back and forth and stuff. So the brand is really catching fire. We plan on, once we do this Florida expansion, going up the East Coast, 95 corridor, and then see where it goes from there. But I think with the professionalism and the experienced people on our board and in our directors, that we're going to be able to do some cool things with this.
There you have it, folks. The greatest pizza in the world is ultimately heading your way. But if you're a snowbird, you do not want to come to South Florida without going to Ah-Beetz. Nick, tell folks where they can find you online, because this pizza is without compare.
Ah-Beetz New Haven Pizza is in 15200 Jog Road, Delray Beach, Florida. The website is ahbeetz.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at Ah-Beetz Pizza and Facebook with the same, Ah-Beetz Pizza, New Haven.
Spell Ah-Beetz for our friends, as in the website address.
Well, website address is ah-beetz.com.
There you have it. The greatest pizza you're ever going to have, folks. Pizza Nick Lodano, thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. Now I'm here with one of my personal heroes, Eric Mancow Muller. He's an American radio and television personality, actor, former child model. He's a superstar when you talk about the radio world. I've learned so much about radio from him. He's also a patriot, an outspoken Christian, a gentleman, a raconteur, a boulevardier, a gourmand, and a rocker. This guy knows more about rock and roll than anybody I know. Mancow, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, how are you? And I found what Trump said about you. I know you encouraged him and got him into politics and all that, and I know you guys probably would have talked politics, but you're far from just a political wonk like so many people I've met that only talk, Breitbart was a good friend of mine, but only politics, where you like to talk about everything, man. You have a wide variety, fashion, movies. You're well-versed in pop culture and food, of course. Anyway,
So last night I had dinner at Mar-a-Lago, the president's private club. I was about to leave, and a lady walked up to me, a little older, nice-looking, very well-dressed, quite polite, and she said, are you Roger Stone? I said, yes, I am. And she said, do you know, I think we have a mutual friend. I said, who's that? She said, well, do you know Billy Corbin of the Smashing Pumpkins? I said, no, actually I don't, but Billy Corbin and I have a mutual friend, and that is the radio legend Mancow. And then she was like, you know Mancow? You actually know him? I said, he's one of my best friends. I said, the day that I got the word that President Trump was going to commute my sentence in the Mueller witch hunt, in which they tried to destroy me, despite the fact that I had done nothing whatsoever wrong, it was the Mancow who was with me that day. It was the Mancow who was praying with me that day. It was the Mancow who was celebrating with me that day. So I'm very proud of our friendship, and you've taught me so much about radio. I'm also very grateful for that.
Well, look, it is a dying art form. It is an art form. As far as the lady at Mar-a-Lago, that's wonderful. I called the band this morning, the Smashing Pumpkins. I toured them. They're friends of mine. They had that great song today, 1979, The World is a Vampire. You may remember that lyric. Anyway, he told me to say hi. He's going to be listening, and his name is Billy Corrigan.
Corrigan.
You keep calling him Billy Corbin.
I apologize. That's because there's a left-wing filmmaker here in Miami named Billy Corbin, so I apologize for that. Faux pas.
He's got a sold-out stadium tour this year. He sold out Wrigley Field coming up this summer and a tour around Europe. Prayers for the people of New York. I know that everybody's okay, but 4.8 earthquake, so prayers for them. I'm sure everybody's fine, but just wanted to mention that.
All right. Well, Billy, I apologize. This afternoon you can call me Roger Stein. How's that?
You're coming to the show, man. We're taking you to the show. I've been trying to get you for years. Vaudeville's not coming back.
Yeah, I look forward to it. So we talked about this yesterday. I wanted to get into it a little bit. I did the original pilot for Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. I did it as a favor for Frank Gannon, who had been a writer for Richard Nixon, had worked for Richard Nixon in his post-presidential years. A very brilliant guy, Frank Gannon, a great writer, went on to be a writer for David Letterman. And he evidently was friends with Maher and said, hey, we're going to try to launch this new thing. Would you come up to New York and be in the pilot for Politically Incorrect? And I did, and I had a great time, and Bill was nice, and the show took off. I was happy about that, and saw some of my friends subsequently go on the show. And then fast forward to the Mueller Russian collusion Russian collusion hoax. Bill Maher invites me on his show, which is now a much, much bigger show. And look, I'm pretty good on my feet, but they take you to that big old CBS studio, and I guess it's probably, I don't know if it's Burbank or Beverly Hills. I think it's Burbank. And it's, if you get this feeling of old Hollywood, it's very cool. They take you to your dressing room. Your name is on the door, They assign a sweet young intern to be kind of your guide during the time that you're there, and Bill's producer comes in to see me. Very, very nice guy. Scott was his name. I'd have to look up his last name, but he actually made my international best dressed list a couple times. He was that well dressed. He was a very nice guy, and he said, "Well, let's talk this through." And I said, "Okay." He said, "You pretty much you say whatever you want out there, but there's one thing you can't do." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You can't try to be funnier than Bill." And I said, "Well, but I mean, Bill has a platoon of comedy writers who work for him, and you can see that he works off index cards, by the way. And, I'm a guy who lives by my wits, my uncles, Leibowitz and Markowitz."
Hey!
One of the oldest vaudeville jokes of all time. This guy Scott, this guy Scott doesn't even crack a smile, not even a smile. He said, no, look, this can go great, but whatever you do, don't try to be funnier than Bill, because then he'll just have to top you. And I said, "Look, I don't mind matching wits with people, but I don't want to fight an unarmed man. In all honesty, it's not that hard." And he said, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And I wasn't going to do it anyway, but the fragility of it, I thought, was pretty interesting. And then so I went into the show, and they seat you on the set. They mic you up. You're all set to go. At the very last minute, just before you go to, you go live, Bill comes out. He doesn't greet anybody, doesn't shake your hand, nothing. He does his monologue, not a single word of which he has written or come up with. And then you go to the panel. Panel goes nicely. I was on with Maxine Waters, of all people. Can you imagine? I mean, it's quite incredible. But in any event, and then when it's over, Bill and his bodyguards kind of sweep out. Now, in this show, when we did our segment alone, he basically questioned my patriotism. He said I was a Russian spy, that I was a traitor to the United States, that I was. He had a lot of funny jokes about the Trump sons and so on. I gave as good as I got, but, the guy accused me some pretty bad stuff. Now, fast forward, Bill now admits that there was no Russian collusion, that the whole thing was BS. So from my point of view, he kind of has an obligation to have me back on and let me clear my name. But talking to his producers, he's not interested in doing that. Now, look, he's already got one problem. He's got that Nancy Reagan, Al Sharpton problem, while his head is much too big for his body. And I think he weighs 145 pounds soaking wet. But I'm sorry, man, Cal, the guy, without a platoon of comedy writers, he's not even faintly amusing. Now, I know you had a different experience with him, so I'm going to let you talk for a while.
Well, you don't need to let me talk. Look, you're wrong, first of all. Hate to do this on your own shows. You shouldn't ask me this stuff. Look, he does have a massive head. He is a runt. He is frightened of his own shadow. Maybe he's been threatened. I don't know. He does have a head like Celine Dion and Nancy Reagan and the aliens from the movie Alien. I get it. But to say he's not funny is that's probably correct too. I don't find him funny. Clever, maybe. I do think he has a hand in writing his monologues. I did get told the same thing. It was a big problem with Dick Cavett and some of these other guys. If you were on his show and you were better than him, if you were better than Dick, you were gone. So people, comedians like Woody Allen and others had to kind of hold back when they were on back in the day when that was the intelligent people were watching that awful show. Dick Cavett, I'm talking about. Maher, I was on with a bunch of conservatives, and I don't want to say who they're friends of yours, although are they really friends of yours? Roger, it's interesting, isn't it? Everybody was your best friend, man. Everybody was your best friend. And the minute you got in trouble, quid pro quo became him, I don't know. And I think a lot of your listeners have been through that in life, man. When you got money, when you just won the lottery, everybody's your best friend. The minute there's a sign of trouble, man, everybody runs. And these two blonde conservative women, everybody would know, and I don't want to cost a friendship with them, but, Bill Maher was making Jesus is a homosexual, that was his comedy routine. Jesus was homosexual, only wanted to be with his mother, only hung out with men, all this nonsense. And I took him to task for it. And I said, this is offensive, this is repulsive, and this is blasphemy, and I really hate it. And while the others that are Christians all just sat there, and this is what Christians do all the time, right? They did it this last Easter. We just sit there and sort of shut up while we lose more and more ground to evil. So I did call him out. He didn't like it. You're supposed to laugh at everything he says. I wouldn't do it. So I kind of know what you're saying. But to act like he's some kind of talentless hack that you want to manhandle just because he won't have you back. Well, he had you on. You got your publicity. You just want more. You're doing this just to get more publicity.
Yeah, exactly. I seriously, I don't think you should be able to smear somebody and then basically publicly admit that you're wrong and then not give them the opportunity to defend themselves. But look, my life is not going to be deeply affected on whether I ever do his show or not. His numbers aren't all that great, as Trump likes to say. His ratings challenged, but we'll let that go. Now, you mentioned Dick Cavett. I'm always mesmerized by these old show business stories where you find out that these entertainers, these celebrities who, when you're a kid, you lionize them, you think they're the greatest, and then you find out that they're just human beings. They're like everybody else. I mean, before there was the internet, I used to, every week, I would rush to the mailbox to get the TV Guide because it was mailed to you on a weekly basis. And then in the front, there was a section of the movies, of all the movies scheduled for the week. So I would go through the movie schedule and I would find that the Marx Brothers, A Day at the Races, or Night at the Opera, or Room Service, was going to be on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, remember, we have no way to tape television shows in that day. You had to turn on the TV and watch it. So I would set my alarm clock, get up at 3 a.m. so I could see, Eddie Cantor in Kid Boots, or Whoopi, or The Jolson Story, or Jolson Sings Again, or any of the Marx Brothers movies. W. Sue Fields, My Little Chickadee, or I think his greatest film, The Bank Dick. I used to see these things in the middle of the night. I thought these guys were unbelievable until I decided to get in politics. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a comedian, in which case I clearly would have starved to death. But then I found out that politics was basically show business for ugly people. But Groucho Marx, who I've read everything about him. I read his book, Groucho and Me. I read a book that he wrote during World War II called Many Happy Returns. I have an original copy of it. It's actually quite valuable now. But I read a book by his son, Arthur Marx. But evidently, Groucho was not really a very nice guy, was he?
Hey, nani, nani, and a hot cha-cha. As Groucho liked to say. I'm just thinking here, Roger, forgive me, but I got to say, Night at the Opera, and then Duck Soup, and then at the Day at the Circus. That was whatever. Those are my favorites. Yeah, I'm a Groucho guy too. I know the producer of Cavett, the guy that created That's Incredible, and most of the Fox lineup, and real legendary guy. What else? Discovered Ryan Seacrest. Created Good Morning America. Created Nightline. I mean, this is a TV legend. And he said Groucho would just thought of Dick Cavett as a jock sniffer, a hack. But no, Groucho was, the feeling of that era was hate. They hated each other because there was limited jobs. The Stooges were very serious. They had Mo Howard off, and I know you were pen pals with Mo Howard. The best of the Stooges. Actually, as I get older, I think Larry is the best Stooge. Kids love, of course, Curly. Anyway, I'm rambling here. But no, they were very serious. They were very competitive. Adam West, who played Batman, was a dear friend of mine, and he did a movie with the Stooges. And he, they were serious guys. Elliot Gould is a friend of mine, and he used to go over and shave Groucho. But they're not funny at all. And they wanted every bit of every penny that was on the table. Very cheap. Never would buy dinner. Quite nasty. But it's because how they came up. It was so competitive, and they really hate. But really, Roger, what do you think of Steve Bannon? What do you think of other people that try to be you? And I'm not just talking about the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland who looks just like you. I'm talking about, when other radio hosts, I hate him. Watch the Vice show with me versus Stern, which, by the way, I never failed. I beat him every single time I went up against him. But that's a whole other show. What a bastard that guy was. Anyway, Roger, it was jealousy. They hated each other, and Groucho was not a nice guy. I hate to burst your bubble.
Yeah, I've read that. Of course, you and I are both great fans of the world's greatest entertainer, Al Jolson. It's funny, I was in a great Italian restaurant place called Mattio's the other night, and there was a singer who was very, very, very talented. His name was Tony Manzo, I believe it was. He was very, very good. So he was on break, and I was talking to him, and I said, so that was terrific. I said, dude, who's your favorite singer of all time? And he said, well, of course, everybody who sings in my genre, we all revere Sinatra, of course.
Yeah.
But he said, he says to me of all people, he says, Sinatra learned a lot from Al Jolson. Now, fortunately, we have an older audience here at 77 WABC. People know who that was, but Jolson was so sensitive, was such an egomaniac that his valet would have to turn on the faucets in his dressing room at full blast so that he couldn't hear the going on before him, because if the act got too big a hand, Jolson would have them stricken from the bill.
Well, that sounds about right. Listen, do you know where I am right now?
Shoot.
I am in the Francis Scott Key Motel in Ocean City, Maryland. I would love to know what you think about the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore that went down, the Taiwan earthquake, the Alex Jones HBO show, the hit piece, the Iran's going to attack us any moment. When do I want to host the show so I can have you on?
I would love that. In fact, your producer reached out to me late yesterday, so I'm going to do your show. I'm going to do your show.
My podcast.
It's going to be very. Go ahead.
The other thing I want to know is, do you think Jesus is coming, or either the Jesus is coming back or the rapture on Monday?
It's funny you said that. So I have a friend, a woman I know who does political fundraising, and it's a very, very, very tough business right now. Very tough business, and she's going through hard times. And she said to me, "Do you want to have dinner late next week?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "Well, wait a minute. Maybe Monday will be the rapture, and then all of our problems will be solved." And I said, "Look at it this way: we could be drinking martinis in heaven." And you know what? I'll invite my parents. It's really a consoling. It's really a consoling thought in its a strange way. I had Jack Posobiec from Human Events on the show here at the Roger Stone Show last weekend, who's a former Navy intelligence guy, really, really, really smart guy, very good guy. And he went into a lot of the open questions about the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert on this matter, but there's a lot of open-ended questions about how this could have happened. But here's what's more disturbing. When I look at projections now to rebuild that bridge, it could take them as long as I read 10 years to rebuild that bridge.
Oh, no way.
We're not the United States anymore, where we can just get everything done correctly and get it done fast. But that's a vital link for commerce in the country. Whoever, if that was indeed targeted, and I'm a conspiracy theorist, so of course I think it was. I think this is just a taste of more to come. I really do. Yeah. Our power grid. Go ahead.
No, brother, look, I am not a conspiracy guy. I try to look at the facts. I don't know about that bridge. Taiwan, I do believe earthquakes can be manufactured. I think the Japan Fukushima earthquake, and I think this Taiwan earthquake, I think, you detonate charges in certain spots, and you cause these things. And I think China's behind a lot of this. They're finding Chinese weapons now in Gaza, of course. And I find it amazing that our leaders and most people have not read The Art of War. Well, everybody in China has, and their leaders, to them, it's their Bible. We have a Bible that talks about peace and love. Their Bible is about how to beat us. And they're using Russia. They're using Israel. They're using everything to weaken us. and so they can snatch up Taiwan, of course, and eventually us. We have been bought and sold, as you know.
All right, folks, if you're just tuning in, this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. We are here with radio and entertainment legend Eric Mancow Muller. It's a great honor to have him on the show, and we'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show, and we're here with the Mancow, American radio legend, who head-to-head beat Howard Stern on the ratings in Chicago every single time.
Yep.
Mancow, you are a man who's without fear, and you always say exactly what you think. I think it's one of the reasons why you decided to leave radio, because they started telling you, well, you can't talk about Jesus Christ, you can't talk about Donald Trump, you can't talk about patriotism, you can't talk about your love of the country, and that would daunt anybody. But how tone deaf can President Joe Biden be to declare Easter, which is Resurrection Sunday, the holiest day for Christians, as transgender visibility day? I mean, I've been in politics a long time, but I can't see how anyone would think that that is a vote getter.
My censorship was about the vaccinations and about asking, and I don't know what I think. I'm still, on everything, but I wasn't even allowed to ask a question about elections or discuss church or look. Here's the thing that's bothering me from my friends and Christian, Catholic, whatever. And even Jewish people are calling me. An atheist friend, John, an Academy Award winner, called me. And he's like, even I know this is disgusting. Okay? I had a Buddhist friend. I had a Hindu friend call me. Okay, but then the people that give Joe Biden the pass, because, he's a feeble old man, and he didn't know, and even that clown that's the spokesperson looks like the clown from The Simpsons. He didn't know. It's not, look, nothing they do is by coincidence. Evil is decloaking. There is something in what they do, and I don't understand it, but in their dark arts, they have to tell you what they're going to do. So you see what's going to happen in movies. You see it in culture. You hear it in songs. They tell you what they're going to do. And then people go, no. Look, it's going to be that if you don't celebrate Trans Day, it's hate speech. Why are you celebrating Easter, not Trans Day? Why don't you have the flag up? This is what we're headed towards. We are headed towards serious persecution of Christians. It is happening all over the world. And, I know we're very concerned about what's going on in Gaza, and I don't want anyone of any religion I don't want anyone to get hurt. But Christians are also being brutalized in Islamic nations and all over the world. And this was not, old Joe. And I also love, by the way, Roger, I just want to say there's something else, people. If the economy is so great, why do they have to keep telling us how great it is? If the economy is so great, how stupid do you feel when you're at the grocery store? How stupid do you feel when you're out to eat? How stupid do you feel when you're filling up your car? And now $20 an hour. They had a funny joke about $20 an hour now in New York, right? $20 an hour is in California. Anyway, they're having trouble finding robots that will act like they hate you enough at Starbucks.
Yeah, we're headed to
an hour.
And we're headed to $4 a gallon gasoline. You heard it here first, folks. That's coming. And Joe can't dip into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve again to try to prop himself up in an election. The whole thing is beyond belief. We can finish with this. Yesterday, Secretary of State, actually I guess it was Friday, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announces that Ukraine is going to join NATO. Now, we signed two different treaties, the Budapest Accords, the Budapest Memorandum, and the Minsk Accords, in which we specifically agreed that if the Russians allowed the reunification of Germany, we would not push NATO Ukraine into NATO. And the reason that's important, it's not just membership in a club, it is because they then will mount missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, on the ground in Ukraine aimed at Russia. Vladimir Putin has said repeatedly, this is his line in the sand that you cannot cross. This is an open invitation for World War III. My friend who was joking about the rapture may not be wrong. Just seems mindless to me. Mindless.
No, brother, I'm not joking about the rapture. I want to be clear on that. The Bible clearly says, the Bible clearly says, no man shall know. You and I, we're men. We don't know. I've heard it, throughout my life. So who knows? Look, I know a couple of things. I know that the Russian collusion thing was a hoax, to hurt you and to hurt Trump and others. Okay, they lie. And I also know that in Ukraine, lots of things going on with children that I don't want to talk about. They're unspeakable. They make me cry. We know that Biden runs his money through there, and I believe it's a money laundering operation. We also know that we signed treaties. There's illegal biological and chemical weapons being made there. We've admitted it, and it's against the law. It's against world law. Biological weapons, like the kind that were made in Wuhan. And would we want that on our border? Would we want missiles on our border? Look, you're not a Russian fan. I'm not a Russian fan. But look at it. And by the way, you want to talk about the rapture? The End Times does say China and Russia against us in the Middle East. You see how that could happen in the Valley of Megiddo, which translates to the word Armageddon, Roger.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when I speak of the rapture, I'm as serious as you are. I love the idea of seeing my parents and my grandparents again and living. I'm ready. And living forever with our Heavenly Father. It's not a joke, folks. It's what you must have faith in. It's what actually keeps me going. And I know the liberals over at the New York Times and Media Matters for America, they're snickering about it right now. Oh, how funny. What a joke. It's not a joke, folks. People change, and that's what I think right now. All right. This has been a great privilege to have the Mancow himself join us. I say it yet again. I've learned so much about radio from you. I'm indebted to you, and I'm always very grateful for your friendship. And give my very best regards to your incredibly gorgeous Italian-American wife.
Yeah, thank you, brother. God bless you. And let's hope we get. They've got new squatters laws. Let's hope we get the squatter out of the White House here soon.
I'm with you on that, brother. Many thanks. All right, folks, that's it for us today. But don't go away, because my good friend Joe Piscopo is going to be right along with Sunday's with Sinatra.